Good day, everyone. I am Professor Mary Ann Agudilla of Southern Luzon State University, and it is my pleasure to present to you my paper entitled Choice Experiment Study on the Willingness to Pay for Improved Watershed Conservation of Mount Banahaw de Lucban, Quezon, Philippines. For the introduction, it is said that ecosystem services have been undervalued because they are regarded mainly as public goods. Consequently, the majority of ecosystem services that bear non-market values are not regularly considered in the management and decision-making processes, hence are often left unaccounted, underestimated, and not factored in land use decisions for sustainable management. Because many of these services and benefits do not have market values, sustainable financing can be difficult to secure. Watersheds are ecosystems that bring forth services that have both market and non-market values. Watersheds play a crucial role in the delivery of various ecosystem services that are considered key natural wealth for ecological integrity, economic growth, and other hydrological services. Failure to include actual values of watershed ecosystem services in the national income accounting in developing countries has profound impacts on conservation program initiatives. Financing such efforts have been a struggle due to the lack of information on the true value, and this in turn constrained the budget for conservation. Hence, the price of watershed protection as an input in the production of having water at the right quantity and quality must be paid by those who benefit from the service. Realizing the importance of Mount Banahaw as a major source of potable water among nearby municipalities, conservation initiatives must be done by various agencies and the public to sustain the watershed services. Neglecting these non-market benefits in management planning could undervalue its ecosystem services and adversely impact its provisioning capabilities. Adding to this insecurity is the insufficiency of funds for the conservation initiatives, and this calls for a wider coverage in estimating the value of watershed conservation and its integration in decision-making process to halt the further environmental damage that threatens its sustainability. And since there are no dedicated national funds for the conservation of Mount Banahaw, there is a call by the PAMBI to discuss payment of water user fees for the upkeep of the watershed that can be tied as an incentive for the resource management. The findings of this study will provide useful information on the social benefits associated with the future watershed conservation options. As for the objectives, the study aims to estimate the value of the improved water supply resulting from the improved conservation of the MBDL watershed. Specifically, it sought to assess the perceptions and awareness of respondents on issues concerning the conservation of MBDL watershed in ensuring sustainable water supply. It also would like to estimate the WTP for improved conservation of the watershed, identify the factors that influence respondents' WTP for the conservation, and draws policy recommendations that will contribute to the sustainable management of the watershed. As for the methods, Mount Banahaw de Lucban, also known as the Lucban Cone, lies on the northeastern portion of the Mount Banahaw San Cristobal Protected Landscape. The entire 1,660 hectares land area is managed by Southern Luzon State University, and it is where the two water concessionaires, Apolinario de la Cruz Water System and the Prime Water Quezon Metro, draw their water for distribution in the adjacent municipalities, including Lucban, Pagbilao, and Lucena City. A discrete choice experiment was used to elicit preferences for a hypothetical improved MBDL conservation program. The attributes used in the CE and their levels were determined after series of focus group discussions and key informant interviews. The training of enumerators were also conducted to have the uniformity of understanding, particularly the way the enumerators will deliver the questionnaire. Pre-testing was conducted to determine if the respondents could understand the CE scenarios, the questionnaire in general, and to identify the most appropriate payment vehicle to use. And using proportional allocation, the percentage of households to be considered from each municipality were calculated, and sample size was determined using Cochrane. Part of the questionnaire is the presentation of the status quo, and this is facilitated by the use of photographs. Details on the water supply situation and the improvement alternatives were also provided to the respondents. So this is an example on how I designed my questionnaire in choice experiment. The creating data was used to generate an orthogonal design which consists of only the main effects. The full factorial design of 192 profiles was reduced to a fraction factorial design of 16 profiles, which were blocked into 4 choice sets. Each questionnaire comprised 4 choice sets with 3 alternatives in each set. Respondents were asked to choose which policy they think would be best for the conservation of MBDL in the future, considering a hypothetical monthly payment. To determine the implicit willingness to pay and compensating surplus, mixed logit was used. Based on the results of the regression, the contribution and effect of each variable were assessed by looking at its coefficients and level of significance. The data analysis used a licensed Data 16.1 choice model statistics software. Policy recommendations on watershed conservation in MPDL were formulated based on the knowledge and awareness, implicit willingness to pay, and consumer surplus, their motives, important attributes to them, and other relevant information obtained from the survey. For results and discussion dealing with knowledge, awareness, and perception of watershed and forest, the concept of a watershed is abstract to the majority of the respondents, while those who knew the concept learned this through attending seminars and hearing the concept from others. The beneficial role that forests and the ecosystem services it can provide were appreciated by the respondents. They became more aware of the role of vegetative cover to help flooding and landslide, given the incidence of a landslide in MBDL caused by Typhoon Bashang in 2010. For willingness to pay results, there is an overwhelming yes vote to the passing of a law for improved conservation of MBDL. Respondents believe that the management will ensure stable and reliable supply of water to dependent municipalities. Half of the respondents mentioned direct donation as a way of contributing to the MBDL conservation program. Other respondents agreed on putting it as a surcharge on the water bill because other than they were already familiar with such, they thought that this was a more transparent collection tool. In charging the conservation fee, respondents mentioned 3 options to make this scheme functional. 1 to be instituted across the board through a flat rate, and 2 are progressive, based on the volume of water consumed or based on household income. The basic mixed logic model results for the attributes show that all estimated coefficients of attribute terms were found to have expected signs and statistically significant. The estimate of the fixed coefficients on price is negative. That implies that the higher the price, the respondent will not choose that alternative at a higher cost. The estimated mean of the random coefficients on the attributes forest cover, water quantity, water quality, forest protection, and research and education are all positive. The positive signs signify that respondents have positive utility for these attributes. And since the respondents experienced water supply interruption and some found water quality issues, the respondents are more likely to choose that alternative from which they will no longer encounter these problems. Table 2 shows the basic mixed logic model results for socioeconomic and awareness variables. The years of education and household size were found to positively influence the respondents' choices. Male and merit respondents are supportive of improved management actions. Water expenditure is also positive, and these are the respondents that bought additional bottled water as an averted behavior, and hence will choose an alternative that will provide them improved water quality at a lower cost. Further, the respondents will choose an alternative that will assure them water availability in a 24-hour period. The variables household ownership and the number of years of residency were also found to be statistically significant to per capita water use, but with negative signs. And this indicates that a respondent might have been adapted themselves in the situation and accepted the quantity and quality of water supplied by the water concessionaires. For implicit and compensating surplus, the relative importance determined by the value of the willingness to pay for each attribute ranked water quantity as the most important attribute, followed by water quality and forest cover. This demonstrates that the improvement in water supply services is the major attribute that positively influences water users' willingness to pay. This can be attributed to the water interruptions they are experiencing that impact their daily domestic activities. The compensating surplus amounts to 77 pesos per month. This measures the change in the improved watershed services that MBDL may provide, and in this case, the improved water supply. Compensating surplus is referred to as the willingness to pay of the household or the benefits that can be received by the household from the change scenario. For the social benefits of Mount Banahaw de Lucban watershed conservation, each household's average willingness to pay was calculated at 77 pesos per month, or about 0.3% of their average monthly income. And taking into account the 38,863 of domestic users dependent on MBDL for water supply, and 64.6% are willing to pay, the approximate present amount of improved MBDL conservation was around 23 million pesos per year. The net present value is estimated at 76 million for 5 years, assuming a 10% interest rate. So the WTP is said to be positive, and this suggests that the domestic water users are supportive of the projects or programs to improve the management of the watershed, since they are the direct beneficiaries of that particular watershed services. For conclusion and recommendations, as revealed by the results of the study, the majority of the respondents have a high level of awareness and appreciation of the beneficial role that forests play in ensuring a safe and reliable water supply. However, most of them have a low level of awareness about the concept of a watershed and its functions. And for these reasons, SLSU and other agencies may carry out programs with the introduction of awareness-oriented education and information campaign about the ecosystem services provided by the MBDL as a watershed. Volunteerism in support of improved MBDL watershed management can also be mobilized given the high level of education of the domestic water users. The positive willingness to pay among domestic water users of MBDL is good enough to cover the financing requirements for the improved watershed conservation. The institution and the concerned agencies can generate potential funds from the domestic water users and use these benefits to better improve the current management initiatives, prioritizing attributes dealing with water quantity, quality, and increase in vegetative cover of the watershed. If Mount Banahaw de Lucban watershed management fee will be included in the monthly water bill or through direct donation, it should be solely designated for improved watershed protection and conservation. The fee shall be deposited in a trust fund and managed by MBDL Watershed Conservation Council. Nevertheless, the estimated willingness to pay should not be an end itself, but also a means to benchmark the possible water users' fee intended for MBDL watershed protection program and hence for the sustainability of water supply. Commissioning this kind of study on willingness to pay on the buyer side already set the stage for further studies like for possible PES studies and related endeavors. And to better understand the total economic value of Mount Banahaw de Lucban, assessment of the MBDL other ecosystem services shall be done. And that's all. Thank you for listening and God bless us all. Good day.